you never finish anything. You may think the reason is laziness. That is the easiest explanation and maybe the cruelest one. It is simple, sharp, and convenient. You look at the unfinished project, the abandoned plan, the course you never completed, the notes you once wrote with excitement, and you tell yourself the same sentence again. I just do not have discipline. But people do not repeat painful patterns for no reason. If you keep stopping in the same place, if every beginning feels alive and every continuation feels heavy, something deeper is usually happening. Laziness is often the label we use when we do not understand fear. Not obvious fear, not panic, not the kind that announces itself loudly, a quieter kind. The fear of finding out what happens when an idea becomes real. The fear of meeting your actual level. The fear of putting effort into something and discovering that the result is not as powerful as the version you carried in your imagination. At the beginning, everything is still clean. The idea has not disappointed you yet. The work has not become repetitive. No one has ignored it, judged it, misunderstood it, or compared it to something better. In your mind, the future is wide open. You can imagine yourself as focused, gifted, consistent, transformed. You can picture the finished thing as impressive, meaningful, maybe even life-changing. That first stage feels safe because it gives you the emotional reward of becoming without forcing you to face the cost of becoming. You begin, and for a moment you feel like the person you want to be. You start writing and you feel like a writer. You create a plan and you feel disciplined. You buy the equipment and you feel like a creator. You imagine the business, the body, the channel, the new life, and the distance between who you are and who you want to be suddenly feels smaller. There is nothing wrong with that spark. Every real change needs some form of hope. But hope becomes dangerous when it turns into fantasy. Fantasy does not ask you to be patient. It does not reveal your weaknesses. It does not require boring repetition, awkward practice, criticism, silence, or slow improvement. Fantasy gives you the identity before the process. Reality does the opposite. Reality says, sit down again, do the part that is not exciting, make something imperfect, stay when the mood changes. Let the first version be worse than the one in your head. Allow the work to become visible before it becomes perfect. That is where many people leave, not because they stopped caring, because they cared so much that the possibility of disappointment became unbearable. When something matters to you, finishing it can feel like standing in front of a judge. The result will speak. It will show what you can do right now, not what you could have done in some ideal future. It will make the dream concrete, and concrete things can be measured. An unfinished project can still be brilliant someday. A finished one has to be what it is. That is why unfinished things can become strangely comforting. They protect your imagination. They allow you to keep saying, I could have done it if I really tried. That sentence is painful, but it is safer than discovering what happens when you do try. Potential is beautiful because it has not been tested. It has no mistakes, no feedback, no evidence, no limits. It lets you believe in a possible version of yourself without asking the current version to prove anything. But if you protect your potential too much, you never develop it. You remain loyal to the imaginary self, the one who will be disciplined later, confident later, successful later, ready later. That future self becomes a hiding place. It allows you to postpone the humiliation of being a beginner. And being a beginner is exactly what growth requires. You cannot become skilled without first being clumsy. You cannot build a body of work without creating things that feel unfinished, uneven, and sometimes embarrassing. You cannot find your voice without passing through imitation, uncertainty, and awkwardness. If you need to look gifted from the start, you will avoid everything that could actually teach you. This is one reason people abandon meaningful work. They are not afraid of effort itself. They are afraid of the identity shift that effort demands. Effort says, maybe I am not naturally exceptional. Practice says, maybe I have to learn like everyone else. Feedback says, maybe I am not above correction. Time says, maybe becoming real is slower than I imagined. For someone whose self-worth depends on feeling special, this can feel devastating. So the mind creates exits. It says the timing is wrong. It says the idea is not strong enough. It says you need more preparation. It says you have lost interest. It says there is a better path somewhere else. It says you will return when life feels calmer. Sometimes those thoughts are true. Not every goal deserves your devotion. Some paths are borrowed from other people. Some dreams belong to a version of you who was trying to escape shame, not express truth. Letting go can be mature. But if every path becomes wrong at the same emotional point, the problem may not be the path. It may be the moment when fantasy ends. A common cycle appears here. First comes idealization. You do not just want the goal. You want what the goal promises to repair. You want the project to rescue your confidence. You want the achievement to make you feel worthy. You want the new identity to erase the old shame. The beginning becomes overloaded with emotional meaning. Then reality arrives. The work is slower than expected. The excitement fades. Progress is uneven. You see how much there is to learn. The world does not immediately respond. The dream stops feeling magical and starts feeling ordinary. That ordinary stage is not a sign that a dream is dead. It is often the first honest stage of commitment. But if you confuse the end of idealization with failure, you leave. You close the document. You stop posting. You stop practicing. You disappear from the plan. You find a new idea that has not disappointed you yet. At first, quitting feels like relief. The pressure drops. You no longer have to face the gap between vision and result. You no longer have to sit inside the discomfort of being seen in progress. But the relief decays. After a while, you do not simply have an unfinished project. You have one more piece of evidence against yourself. Self-trust weakens quietly. You start another thing, and a part of you already expects betrayal. You feel excited for a few hours, maybe a few days, but underneath the enthusiasm, there is a tired voice saying, "We know how this ends." That voice is not proof that you are broken. It is memory. The mind remembers patterns. It remembers promises you did not keep, not to punish you, but to predict what may happen next. If you want to rebuild trust with yourself, you do not need a dramatic transformation. You need evidence. Small, repeated evidence. I said I would finish this page, and I did. I said I would return tomorrow, and I returned. I felt the urge to quit, but I paused before obeying it. I allowed something imperfect to exist. I did not turn one disappointing result into a sentence against my entire life. This is how self-trust comes back. not through speeches, through contact with reality. And reality requires a different relationship with disappointment. Disappointment is not always a warning to stop. Sometimes it is the moment when illusion burns away. You see the thing without its glow. You meet the work as it is, not as it appeared in your imagination. That can feel like loss, but it is also the beginning of adulthood. A fantasy cannot be improved. A hidden project cannot grow.
An imaginary life cannot be lived. Only something real can change. When you finish, you let the idea touch the ground. It may not land beautifully. It may not receive applause. It may not heal the wound you hoped it would heal. But it gives you information. It gives you a next step. It gives you a relationship with the world instead of a private romance with possibility. Many people are not afraid of failure alone. They are also afraid of success. Success sounds pleasant from a distance. Up close, it can mean visibility, expectation, responsibility, envy, pressure, and the loss of familiar excuses. If you grew up feeling safest when you were unnoticed, success can feel like exposure. If people around you reacted badly when you shined, achievement can feel like betrayal. If your role was to stay manageable, becoming more visible may disturb the emotional order you learned to survive in. So you sabotage progress at the exact moment it starts becoming real. You delay. You become disorganized. You rewrite the plan endlessly. You lose interest before anyone can expect more from you. You prepare so thoroughly that you never have to release anything. Preparation can look responsible while functioning as avoidance. Of course, learning matters, planning matters, skill matters. But when preparation becomes endless, it is often not about quality anymore. It is about avoiding the vulnerability of completion. There will always be one more thing to improve, one more book, one more course, one more tool, one more version, one more reason to wait. Perfection is not the moment when nothing can be improved. That moment never comes. Finishing is the moment when you decide that the work is allowed to exist without being ideal. That decision requires self-respect, not arrogance, not blind confidence, not the belief that everything you create is amazing. Self-respect says, my imperfect effort deserves reality. It says, I can be seen while still learning. It says, the result may not save me, but hiding is costing me more than failure would. Avoidance is expensive. It costs time, but also something more intimate. It costs the feeling that you can rely on yourself. It costs vitality. It keeps you living in future tense. Someday I will start. Someday I will be ready. Someday I will become disciplined. Someday I will know who I am. Someday I will choose my own life. Someday can become a beautiful prison. It gives you comfort without movement. It lets you imagine change without the risk of reality. But a life made only of possible selves eventually becomes painful. The possible artist, the possible creator, the possible honest person, the possible free person, the possible version of you who will finally begin when conditions are perfect. At some point, one possible self must become real enough to be imperfect. That is the price of living. And still, this is not only about projects. It is also about the emotional weight you carry. Sometimes you do not finish because the work is difficult. Other times,
You cannot move because your system is tired from years of invisible effort. People underestimate the cost of suppressed emotion. They separate productivity from grief, discipline from resentment, ambition from loneliness, as if the mind were a machine that should perform regardless of what the heart is carrying. But unprocessed emotion does not disappear. It becomes tension, numbness, irritability, procrastination, distraction, heaviness. It becomes the strange inability to do the thing you care about. It becomes the collapse that happens only when nobody is watching. You may not be lazy. You may be emotionally overloaded. You may have spent years being strong in a way that slowly exhausted you. Strong because nobody asked the right questions. Strong because needing help felt unsafe. Strong because your pain made other people uncomfortable. Strong because you learned to function no matter what. Strong because stopping felt like failure. Strong because being useful was the easiest way to feel loved. At first, this kind of strength is survival. Later, it becomes a cage. You become the person who handles things, understands others, does not ask for much, stays calm, keeps going. People admire your maturity. They trust your independence. They assume you are fine because you have become skilled at hiding the cost. But the body knows. The body remembers every swallowed sentence, every moment of forced calm, every need you dismissed before someone else could dismiss it. It remembers the years you performed stability while something inside you waited to be noticed. Eventually, your strength may turn into exhaustion, not simple tiredness, a deeper fatigue. The kind that makes even small choices feel heavy. The kind that does not improve after one night of sleep. The kind that comes from living too long against yourself.
When that happens, motivational advice can feel almost insulting.
Work harder, stay focused, wake up earlier, stop making excuses, push through. But what if pushing through is the very strategy that made you lose contact with yourself? What if you do not need more noise? What if you need quiet? Not emptiness, not escape, not giving up. Quiet. Enough silence to hear what your life has been trying to say beneath the constant advice, comparison, content, pressure, and other people's definitions of success. Modern life is loud in a way the nervous system was never built to handle. There is always another video telling you who to become, another opinion about discipline, healing, money, confidence, masculinity, femininity, purpose, productivity, success. Every voice sounds certain. Every method promises transformation. Every comparison suggests that you are late. After a while, your inner voice becomes difficult to recognize. You may no longer know whether a goal belongs to you or whether you absorbed it from the atmosphere. You may be chasing success when what you truly want is relief from shame. You may be chasing discipline when what you need is rest. You may be chasing visibility when what you need is to feel real to yourself. You may be chasing approval because you never learned to trust your own desire. This is why motivation often fails. Motivation can help when the path is yours and you simply need energy to continue. But if the path is built from fear, motivation becomes pressure with better branding. You can motivate yourself to move faster in the wrong direction. You can become efficient at betraying yourself.
Sometimes the better question is not, how do I become more motivated? It is, what am I refusing to hear? Maybe one part of you wants achievement, while another wants safety. One part wants to be seen, while another fears judgment.
One part wants freedom, while another fears disappointing the people who shaped your first sense of belonging. One part wants to create, while another believes an imperfect result will expose you. One part wants rest, while another believes rest must be earned through exhaustion. So you freeze. From the outside, freezing looks like laziness. Inside, it may be an argument between parts of you that have never learned to trust each other. This inner conflict becomes stronger when you have spent years playing roles. The responsible one, the funny one, the quiet one, the strong one, the easygoing one, the talented one, the one who never complains, the one who keeps the peace, the one who does not need help, the one who makes others comfortable. Roles begin as protection. If honesty created conflict, you learned to edit yourself. If sadness was inconvenient, you learned humor. If anger was punished, you learned politeness. If love felt conditional, you learned performance. If failure brought shame, you learned perfectionism. If being real felt unsafe, you learned how to become acceptable. At first, the role helps you survive. Later, it becomes difficult to remove. You may not know where the mask ends and where your actual face begins. You may even fear that without the pleasing, proving, adapting, and performing, there would be nothing solid left. People say, be yourself, as if the self is always waiting nearby, untouched and obvious. But for many people, authenticity is not a simple choice. It is a risk. To be real means someone might be disappointed. Someone might judge you. Someone might stop benefiting from your silence. Someone might prefer the version of you that required self-erasure. Someone might not understand the desires you have hidden for years. If your nervous system associates honesty with rejection, being yourself will not feel natural at first. It may feel dangerous. That does not mean you are fake. It means you adapted. You became fluent in reading rooms, predicting reactions, softening your needs, adjusting your personality, managing impressions. From the outside, it may look like emotional intelligence. Inside, it can feel like exile. You are present, but not fully. Liked, but not deeply known. Useful, but not held. Surrounded, but lonely in the parts of you that matter most. And when you do not feel real in your own life, finishing meaningful things becomes harder. Completion requires ownership. It asks you to say, this is mine. I chose this. I made this. I stand behind it, even while it is imperfect. That is difficult when you are unsure which desires are truly yours. Maybe you chose what seemed responsible. Maybe you chose what made your parents calmer. Maybe you chose what society calls success. Maybe you chose the safest option because safety looked like wisdom. Maybe you learned to want what would not be criticized. A life built from should can look respectable. It can have structure, approval, achievements, even comfort. But inside there may be a quiet distance. You wake up inside a routine that technically makes sense and still feel misplaced. People praise your choices, yet the praise does not reach the part of you that feels absent.
At some point, a question appears. Where am I in all of this? Not the role, not the image, not the person others congratulate, not the version who knows how to behave. You. Where are you? This question can arrive quietly. You may be sitting in a room, walking through the city, answering a message, looking at your calendar, and suddenly feel as if you are watching your life from a distance. Everything is functioning, but something is not alive. That feeling is worth listening to. It may be the part of you that can no longer tolerate being postponed. Many people do not lose themselves in one dramatic event. They drift away through small adaptations. One yes when they wanted to say no.
One silence when they wanted to speak. One dream delayed until a better time. One compromise to avoid conflict. One role accepted because it made others comfortable. One more year of telling themselves they will change later. Eventually, later becomes crowded with unlived lives. You may wake up and not understand how you got where you are. But the deeper question is not only how you got there, it is where you began leaving yourself. Maybe it happened when someone laughed at what mattered to you. Maybe when your sensitivity was treated like a problem. Maybe when success became the only safe way to be valued. Maybe when you realized that honesty could cost you approval. Maybe when you decided your real desires were too complicated to explain. Coming back will not happen in one cinematic moment. It happens through smaller acts of truth. You pause before agreeing. You notice where your body tightens. You finish one small thing without making it perfect. You let someone misunderstand you without rushing to repair the image. You choose rest before collapse. You admit that a goal is not yours. You return to something that matters, but with less pressure. You stop calling fear logic without questioning it. This return may bring grief. You may grieve the years spent trying to be acceptable, the dreams you abandoned too early, the version of yourself that never had permission to exist, the relationships where you were loved for your function more than your truth, the energy lost in performing strength. Grief is not regression, it is contact. You are finally feeling what you had to bury in order to keep going. Anger may come too, quiet anger, the kind that rises when you realize how often you swallowed yourself to maintain peace. Anger because people praised your strength but ignored your loneliness. Anger because you became low maintenance while secretly starving for tenderness. Anger because your needs were treated like complications. Do not fear that anger immediately. Anger is not automatically cruelty. Sometimes it is the part of you that still remembers you deserved better. It points toward a boundary, a wound, a truth that was pushed aside. If you never listen to anger, it does not become kindness. It often becomes resentment, numbness, or sabotage. And sadness, if ignored, does not disappear either. It becomes heaviness. It becomes loss of interest. It becomes difficulty imagining the future. It becomes that quiet emptiness where even good things do not fully reach you. You may think you lack motivation when you actually have not grieved. This is why sometimes breaking down is part of recovery. A breakdown is not always destruction.
It can be the moment when an old structure finally admits it cannot carry you anymore. The persona that looked strong begins to crack. The role that kept you safe starts to feel unbearable. The survival strategy loses its usefulness. From the outside, it may look like you are falling apart. Inside, something more honest may be trying to emerge. You stop tolerating empty conversations. You cannot force yourself to care about certain expectations. You need more silence. You become less available for performance. You question choices you once defended. You feel raw, uncertain, less polished. This does not mean you are weak. It may mean you are no longer willing to survive at the cost of yourself. The danger is that people often punish themselves at this exact moment. They feel the first signs of collapse and immediately try to become productive again. They reach for another plan, another rule, another motivational speech, because stillness feels frightening. But healing often begins when you stop performing recovery. Sometimes the most important movement is not forward, it is inward. To stop saying you are fine when you are not. To stop pretending you want what you never chose. To stop treating exhaustion as a character flaw. To stop calling self-betrayal discipline. To stop mistaking approval for love. To stop using constant motion to avoid truth. Truth may not feel comfortable at first, but it reduces the cost of living divided. Lies require maintenance. Every false yes creates another performance. Every avoided conversation becomes background noise in the mind. Every suppressed desire turns into tension somewhere else. No wonder you are tired. You may be living two lives, the visible one and the hidden one. The visible life performs, answers, produces, smiles, explains. The hidden life waits, aches, resents, dreams, doubts, remembers. Bringing them closer together can be painful, but it is also relieving. Even when truth creates consequences, it gives the soul a single direction. This is where discipline becomes more honest. Discipline is not the enemy. Structure matters. Consistency matters. Without some form of commitment, you can turn reflection into a beautiful room where nothing changes. The discipline without self-knowledge can become self-abandonment with a schedule. You can force yourself to continue a path that slowly empties you. You can become proud of endurance while ignoring that you are enduring the wrong life. You can climb faster and faster without asking whether the ladder is leaning against a wall you chose. The deeper work is discernment. Some resistance means you are nearing something meaningful. It appears when you are about to be seen, to finish, to choose honestly, to stop hiding behind potential. That resistance deserves compassion, but not automatic obedience. Other resistance signals self-betrayal. It appears when you keep saying yes while your body says no. When the goal belongs to someone else. When you are performing success to earn love. When your effort is fueled by shame rather than care. Both can feel similar at first. That is why you need quiet. Quiet enough to ask questions no audience can answer. What am I afraid will happen if I finish? What result am I trying not to meet? Who would be disappointed if I chose honestly? Which parts of my life are mine and which are inherited? Where do I feel alive? Where do I feel edited? What do I keep starting because beginnings let me imagine change without risking reality? What would I choose if nobody clapped? What would I release if nobody judged me for releasing it? These questions are not meant to create instant motivation. They are meant to return you to yourself. And once you begin returning, you may need to forgive yourself differently. Not with a vague sentence like, "Everything is okay," but with a deeper understanding of why you became this way. You were not born afraid of finishing. You were not born ashamed of imperfection. You were not born needing a mask. You were not born disconnected from your own desires. These patterns developed somewhere, maybe in a home where love depended on performance. Maybe in a school where mistakes were humiliating. Maybe in relationships where honesty was punished. Maybe in a culture that taught you to measure your worth by achievement. Maybe through years of being compared, dismissed, misunderstood, or expected to be strong before you were ready. Understanding this does not remove responsibility. It gives responsibility a place to stand. You can say, "This pattern protected me once, but now it is costing me my life." That sentence is powerful. It honors the past without letting the past rule the future. The next step is not to become unstoppable. That fantasy usually creates another cycle of pressure and collapse. The next step is smaller. Choose one thing that matters. Not the most impressive thing, not the one that gives you the strongest fantasy, not the one that helps you escape shame for a few hours. Choose something that remains meaningful after the excitement fades. Then reduce it until it becomes real. A page, a recording, a walk, a conversation, a boundary, a draft, a simple decision, a quiet hour without consuming someone else's advice. The frightened mind needs evidence, not grand declarations. A small, completed action teaches more than a perfect plan. But the action must be real, not more research when you already know enough to begin. Not rearranging tools, not redesigning the idea endlessly, not waiting for the perfect emotional state. A real step changes something, even slightly. A sentence exists, a file is saved, a message is sent, a boundary is spoken, a draft is finished, a choice is made. This is how you build a different relationship with yourself. You also need to stop making every result sacred. Let a project be a project. Let a mistake be a mistake. Let criticism be information. Let silence from others be silence, not proof that you are worthless. Let success be an experience, not an identity. Let rest be part of the rhythm, not a reward for self-destruction. The more you separate your worth from the outcome, the less terrifying completion becomes. You can finish something and remain whole. You can release work that is not perfect. You can receive feedback without turning it into humiliation. You can fail without becoming the failure. You can succeed without making success responsible for healing every wound. This is maturity, not a life without fear, but a life where fear does not make every decision. Fear can speak. It does not need to drive.
When fear says, "If you finish, they will judge you," you can answer, "Maybe, but hiding has been judging me for years." When it says, "What if it is not good enough?" you can answer, "Then I will learn from something real." When it says, "What if I fail?" you can answer, "Then I will fail as someone who showed up." When it says, "What if success changes everything?" you can answer, "Then I will meet that change when it comes."
I do not need to sabotage my life to keep it familiar. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. If you have lived in self-doubt for years, confidence may not feel peaceful at first. If you have always been the one who almost makes it, finishing may feel strange. If you have built your identity around potential, completion may feel like exposure. This is why change can create anxiety even when it is good. You are not only building something new, you are losing an old psychological home. Even painful homes are familiar. You knew how to explain yourself there. You knew how to survive there. You knew how to delay, hide, restart, perform, and recover just enough to repeat the pattern. A freer life asks for improvisation. It asks you to choose without total certainty, to be visible before you feel ready, to disappoint certain expectations, to discover your desires after years of asking what would be acceptable. At first, your own wants may be quiet.
They may not arrive as a dramatic calling. They may appear as small signals. This feels alive. That drains me. I need space. I want to try. I do not want to explain myself today. I miss this. I cannot keep pretending. I feel more real here. Respect those signals. A person who has been disconnected from themselves often returns through subtle sensations before big revelations. Do not dismiss the quiet pull. It may know more than the noise. There is also loneliness in becoming honest. Not everyone will celebrate the loss of your old role. Some people liked you most when you were easy to manage. Some benefited from your silence, your availability, your lack of boundaries, your ability to understand everyone while asking for little. When you change, the pattern changes. If you were always agreeable, honesty may seem like aggression. If you were always available, rest may seem like rejection. If you carried emotional weight for others, your refusal to continue may feel like abandonment to them. If you never showed needs, your needs may confuse people. This does not mean everyone around you is bad. It means relationships are often built around familiar dynamics. When one person becomes more real, the arrangement has to adjust. Some connections will deepen, others may resist. That can hurt. But approval is not the same as intimacy. If someone only accepts the version of you that requires self-erasure, their acceptance is not peace. It is a contract you signed under pressure. You are allowed to renegotiate, carefully, respectfully, slowly if needed, but honestly. You cannot become yourself while remaining entirely devoted to everyone else's comfort. This applies to your work, too. If you create only to be approved, you will be controlled by reaction. If you never release anything until it cannot be criticized, you will never release anything. If every viewer, reader, parent, friend, stranger, or imagined judge has to approve before you move, your life will remain frozen. There is no authentic path without the risk of misunderstanding. The goal is not to become indifferent,
Sensitivity is not a flaw. Wanting to be seen is human. The goal is to stop allowing judgment to decide whether you exist. Let people have reactions. Their reaction is not your identity. This is especially important in creative work. A video, a text, a project, a decision, none of it can carry your entire worth. It is an expression, not your soul on trial. When you understand that, you can improve without collapsing. You can look at your work and say, this part is weak, this part has life, this needs structure, this needs courage, this can be better. That is different from saying, I am weak, I have no life, I am not enough, I should stop. Healthy criticism separates the work from the self. Shame fuses them together.
If you want to finish more, you must learn to protect that separation. You made something imperfect. That does not make you an imperfect person. You received a small response. That does not make your existence small. You failed once. That does not make failure your identity. You changed direction. That does not mean the past was wasted. Life is not a courtroom. Not every outcome is a verdict. Some outcomes are simply material to learn from, material to refine, material to redirect, material to understand yourself more honestly. This mindset makes continuation possible, because if every mistake is fatal, you will avoid action. If every result is information, you can stay in motion. There is another important distinction. Rest is not the same as quitting. People who have lived under pressure often confuse the two. They either push until collapse or disappear completely. They do not know how to pause without shame. But sustainable work requires rhythm, inhale and exhale, effort and recovery, expression and silence, structure and space. If you only know how to move through force, the moment you rest may feel like failure. But rest is not the enemy of discipline. It is what prevents discipline from becoming self-punishment. You can rest and return. That sentence may be new to your nervous system. You do not have to burn everything down because you are tired. You do not have to declare the goal dead because today you have no energy. You do not have to turn one slow day into a collapse of identity. Sometimes the most mature thing is to pause without dramatizing the pause. Close the laptop. Sleep. Walk. Eat. Breathe. Return tomorrow. No grand speech, no self-attack, no new personality, just return. Returning is more important than intensity. Intensity is easy at the beginning. It feels powerful, cinematic, transformative. Returning is quieter. It builds a life. Anyone can be inspired for one night. The question is who you become after the emotion fades. Can you come back without the original excitement? Can you continue when the work becomes plain? Can you do the next honest thing without needing it to feel magical? This is where real consistency begins. Not in constant motivation, but in a calmer loyalty to what matters. You do not need to feel inspired every day. You need a relationship with the work that can survive ordinary moods. That relationship becomes possible when the work is not carrying the burden of proving you are worthy. It can simply be something you care about. Care is quieter than obsession. Obsession demands immediate transformation.
Care returns steadily. Obsession panics when results are slow. Care understands seasons. Obsession turns the goal into identity. Care keeps the goal connected to life. A lot of people call obsession discipline because it looks intense from the outside. But obsession often ends in collapse. Care lasts longer. If you want to finish more, learn to care without worshipping.
Care about the project, but do not make it your God. Care about improvement, but do not hate the beginner. Care about success, but do not use success to decide whether you deserve kindness. Care about your future, but do not abandon the person living today. That balance is difficult, but it is the center of a healthier life. You are allowed to want more. You are also allowed to move gently. Ambition and tenderness do not have to be enemies. The world often teaches that only harshness creates results. But harshness may only create temporary obedience. It may get you moving, but it rarely makes you whole. Gentleness is not a lack of standards. Gentleness is standards without contempt. It says, "This matters, and so do I." That sentence can change the way you work. Instead of forcing yourself like an enemy, you begin guiding yourself like someone you are responsible for protecting. You still show up, you still complete things, you still face discomfort, but you stop using self-hatred as fuel. Self-hatred burns fast and leaves damage. Self-respect burns slower and lasts longer. This does not mean the path becomes easy. There will still be moments when you want to quit, moments when the old story returns, moments when disappointment feels like proof, moments when the mask feels safer than honesty, moments when silence brings up emotions you would rather avoid. But now you can recognize the pattern. You can say, "This is the place where I usually leave." That sentence gives you power. Before, the pattern was automatic. Now there is a pause. In that pause, you can choose. Maybe you continue, maybe you rest, maybe you adjust the goal, maybe you release it because it truly is not yours. Maybe you ask for help. Maybe you finish a smaller version instead of abandoning the whole thing. The point is not to force one answer. The point is to stop disappearing unconsciously. A mature life is not a life where you finish everything. It is a life where you understand the difference between release and escape. Release feels sad but clean. Escape feels relieving but leaves residue. Release comes after honesty. Escape avoids honesty. Release creates space. Escape creates another unfinished room inside you. If a dream no longer belongs to you, let it go with respect. Do not turn it into another weapon against yourself. Maybe it gave you hope when you needed it. Maybe it introduced you to a deeper desire. Maybe the form is finished, but the truth underneath remains. Perhaps you do not want that exact career, but you still want freedom. Perhaps you do not want that relationship, but you still want intimacy. Perhaps you do not want public success, but you still want expression. Perhaps you do not want to prove yourself anymore, but you still want to feel alive. Keep the truth. Release the costume. But if something still matters and you are only afraid, Do not call fear wisdom too quickly. Fear often speaks with a serious voice. It sounds practical, logical, mature. It says you are being realistic. But realism helps you prepare. Fear tries to make you vanish. Realism says, this will take work. Fear says, do not try. Realism says, you may need feedback. Fear says, criticism will destroy you. Realism says, start where you are. Fear says, where you are is unacceptable. Learn the difference. You do not need fake positivity. You do not need to tell yourself you are brilliant if you do not believe it. You can be grounded. Maybe this is hard, and I can still begin. Maybe someone else is better, and I can still practice. Maybe I am afraid, and fear is not an instruction. Maybe I have quit before, and today I can finish one part. This is not dramatic. It is useful. Useful is better than dramatic when you're trying to change a pattern. Drama creates intensity. Usefulness creates movement. So begin with movement small enough to repeat. Do one real thing. Finish one small cycle. Let the result exist. Return after rest. Listen to the emotions that appear. Tell the truth about what is yours and what is borrowed. Over time, your relationship with yourself changes. You no longer need every beginning to feel magical. You no longer treat boredom as failure. You no longer confuse disappointment with a command to leave. You no longer require perfection before allowing reality. You no longer use other people's expectations as the only map. You no longer search for motivation when what you actually need is silence. And perhaps most importantly, you stop calling yourself weak for being tired. You are not weak because you reached a limit. A limit is information. It tells you something about your pace, your environment, your emotional load, your choices, your body, your unmet needs. If you listen early, a limit can guide you. If you ignore it for years, it may become a collapse. Sometimes falling apart is what happens when a person has held themselves together for too long in the wrong shape. Do not romanticize the breaking. It hurts. But do not shame it either. Something in you may be trying to reorganize around truth. Let that process be slow. There is no need to turn healing into another performance. You do not have to become a perfect version of yourself by Monday. You do not have to announce a new identity. You do not have to prove that this time is different through extreme promises. Extreme promises often belong to the same old cycle. This time I will change everything. This time I will never quit. This time I will become unstoppable. Then real life arrives, and the promise breaks under its own weight. Make smaller promises. Promises the real you can keep. The real you may be afraid, tired, uncertain, sensitive, still attached to approval, still learning how to rest, still unsure which desires are authentic. Build with that person. The fantasy version does not need compassion because it does not exist. The real you does. Ask what would be honest today. Maybe the honest step is finishing a small part of the work. Maybe it is admitting that the work has become a performance. Maybe it is resting without scrolling through another 100 opinions. Maybe it is telling someone no.
Maybe it is returning to a dream with less pressure. Maybe it is letting go of a goal that was never yours. Maybe it is writing down the fear instead of obeying it. Do that. Then do another honest thing tomorrow. A life changes through accumulated honesty. Not perfect honesty, not public honesty, not a dramatic confession every time. Just small refusals to keep betraying what you know. Eventually, you may finish something and nothing spectacular will happen. No applause loud enough to heal you, no sudden transformation, no feeling that you have finally become untouchable. At first, that may disappoint you.
You expected completion to feel like arrival. But stay with the quiet after finishing. There may be something there that is more valuable than excitement. Relief, stability, respect. A sense that you did not run. A memory your nervous system can use later. I was afraid, and I stayed. I was imperfect, and I completed it. I was disappointed, and I did not disappear. I was seen, and I survived. I finished, and I remained whole. That is self-trust returning. It rarely arrives as a dramatic emotion. It arrives as evidence. One day you notice that you do not need to scare yourself into every action. You can move because you have a history of returning. You can tolerate the middle because you no longer worship the beginning. You can face the result because it is not the judge of your entire worth. This is what real confidence often is. Not certainty that you will be praised. The knowledge that you can stay with yourself no matter what happens. You may still be afraid. That is fine. Fear does not disqualify you. It means something matters. Let it matter without letting it rule. Let the work be human. Let the path be slower. Let the result be information. Let the old role loosen. Let the silence show you what the noise has been covering. Let yourself discover who you are when you no longer perform survival. And if today all you can do is one honest step, take it. Not to prove anything, not to become impressive, not to erase the past. Take it because a life is built in the moments when you return to yourself. Again, not perfectly. Again, not loudly. Again, not for applause. Just again. Until one day, you realize you are no longer living only in beginnings. You are no longer waiting for a flawless version of yourself to start the real life. You are here, in the work, in the quiet, in the unfinished but living reality of becoming, in the choice to continue without turning yourself into an enemy, in the courage to finish something without demanding that it save you. And maybe that is enough for now. Not because your life is complete, but because it is finally